we know that there's actual cloning going on. The real question is cloning going on? Yeah, it is.
There is one man in Hollywood, in the entire entertainment industry, whose track record has made people stop laughing and start paying attention. Not once. Not about Diddy, not about the gatekeepers, not about Harvey, not about the power structure behind the scenes. And that man is Katt Williams. While everybody else was turning it into jokes, Katt kept speaking like someone who had already seen the ending. While comedians were getting blackballed and artists were learning to stay quiet, Katt Williams stood in front of the world and said the things nobody else wanted attached to their name.
All of these big dick deviants is all catching hell in 2024. It's up for all of them. It don't matter if you Diddy or whoever you is, TG Jakes, any of them. All lies will be exposed. That's all. And anyone who takes that the wrong way, know why they take it the wrong way. The truth is the light.
And now, he's saying something about NBA YoungBoy that could completely change the way people look at his entire story. Before we get into this, do me a favor. Like the video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Because this is exactly the type of content that mysteriously disappears. I'm serious. We've already had to re-upload this more than once. That alone should tell you something. So share this before it's gone. Now let's talk about what really happened. Back in January 2024, Katt Williams sat down with Shannon Sharpe on Club Shay Shay, and what followed became one of the biggest interview moments the internet had seen in years. Everybody remembers the headlines. Everybody remembers the jokes, the call-outs, the names. But buried underneath all of the viral moments was something a lot more unsettling. Most people were locked in on the comedy. Katt, on the other hand, seemed like he was leaving breadcrumbs. At one point, Katt basically doubles down on the same message he's been giving for years. Everything he said eventually came out. Not immediately, not all at once, but eventually. Shannon laughed, the room laughed, the audience laughed, but Katt didn't. He had that same stillness, that same look he gets when he's no longer performing and is instead trying to tell you something without saying it too directly. And then, later in that conversation, he alludes to young artists being taken into environments that change them. Not mentor them, not develop them, change them. Shannon tries to keep the interview moving, but Katt keeps pulling the conversation back towards something darker. He never fully spells it out, but that's what made people replay the interview afterward. Because once you hear it a second time, it doesn't sound random anymore. It sounds deliberate.
I don't want no parts. I done seen what these things can do to people. Anything that take over your free will is the devil itself.
Have you ever thought about what your life would have been had you stayed in Dayton, Ohio?
No.
To understand why that matters, you have to look closely at the NBA YoungBoy timeline. Not the fan page version, not the clipped up social media version, the full timeline. Because once you lay everything out in order, the story starts feeling a lot stranger than most people are comfortable admitting. NBA YoungBoy, born Kentrell Deshaun Galden, ran into serious legal trouble at a very young age. By the time most kids were still figuring out who they wanted to be, he was already being pulled into a life that moved at a speed most people couldn't survive. Then the rise happened fast, almost too fast. Teen years, legal problems, massive fame, nonstop headlines, constant chaos, and somehow, at the same time, one of the most dominant streaming runs in rap. Then comes the part people don't sit with long enough, the gaps, the disappearances, the stretches where everything goes quiet, and then suddenly he's back. Same name, same brand, same audience, but to some people, not quite the same presence. YoungBoy.
YoungBoy. The rapper was arrested around 4:30 Tuesday morning on multiple drug charges. The rapper was one of 16 arrested at the scene.
3 of them, I believe, were convicted felons. So if they didn't have weapons in their possession, they were around weapons.
According to BRPD, they all attempted to run upon their arrival. The alleged suspicious behavior led police to search cars at the scene. They confiscated 14 guns, $79,000 in cash and drugs. Galden was released on $75,000 bond Tuesday afternoon.
The rapper's attorney argues his client never had possession of the weapons or drugs because he doesn't own any of the cars on the scene. scene. The attorney released a statement saying, in part, his client is innocent of all charges he was booked on last night and looks forward to defending himself.
There are periods in the timeline where he seems to vanish from public view, and when he returns, people start noticing changes. Some say the music feels different. Some say the energy feels different. Others point to the voice, the look, the facial structure, the mannerisms. Now, obviously, a lot of people explain that away with age, stress, weight fluctuation, legal pressure, growth, and all the other things that come with fame. And to be fair, some of that is completely reasonable. But what made this theory catch fire wasn't just fan speculation. It was Katt Williams continuing to hint that something happened behind the scenes. In a separate conversation that got far less mainstream attention, Katt implied that YoungBoy had been taken somewhere. And when he came back, he seemed to be operating differently, almost like someone moving on a schedule instead of instinct. That word matters, schedule, because once you hear it in that context, it changes the way you look at everything that follows. And this is where the conversation gets darker. Because once people started connecting those remarks to broader industry rumors, the theory stopped being just about one rapper. It became about systems, about control, about what the industry allegedly does to artists once they become too valuable to lose. When Epstein's world started collapsing in public, most people focused on the names they recognized: politicians, billionaires, celebrities, power players. But there has always been another side to those conversations online. The idea that some operations weren't just about blackmail or exploitation, but about experimentation, manipulation, and identity-level control. Mainstream outlets dismissed that instantly. Social platforms buried it. But Katt Williams kept circling back to the same kind of warning in his own way. In one of his later performances, Katt goes into a stretch that didn't land like normal comedy. People laughed, but nervously, because it didn't sound like a setup. It sounded like a warning. He talks about places where people don't just lose dignity, they lose identity. And once you hear that line, it becomes hard not to connect it to the way he talks about certain young artists disappearing for a while and returning as if something fundamental has shifted. Then there's the music itself. And no, I'm not pretending to be an audio engineer, but a lot of people online have tried to compare YoungBoy's earlier vocals to his later material, and their argument is always the same. They hear a difference that feels bigger than simple artistic evolution. Not just style, not just delivery, something deeper in the tone, the resonance, the emotional texture. Now again, voices do change, especially when somebody starts recording as a teenager and matures under pressure. That part is obvious, but the people pushing this theory insist the shift doesn't feel gradual. It feels abrupt, like there's a dividing line in the timeline, where one version ends and another begins. Katt has even framed it in a way that hits people emotionally. The early music, according to that interpretation, sounds raw, damaged, human. The later music sounds cleaner, more controlled, more efficient, but to some listeners, less alive. Less chaotic maybe, but also less personal. And whether you agree with that or not, it explains why this conversation keeps coming back. Because people aren't just reacting to lyrics, they're reacting to presence. Then we get to the other piece nobody can ignore: output. The amount of music NBA YoungBoy has released is so massive that even people who don't follow him closely stop and ask how it's even possible. We're talking about project after project after project in a span where most artists would struggle to finish one.
Seemed like, people are saying, well, you only obligated to do a certain amount of albums, but you over-deliver, right? You gave them so many projects.
It brings some type of good feeling to put a tape together and just release it. I left Atlanta because I wanted to experience some more stuff.
I rest my case. Even though like subject matter to me, it sounds like the album focuses on love.
Like I see people talking about raging music and these sort of terms. You also challenge the aesthetic, like people saying, well, was it face painting or painting your nails and doing these different sort of style things? Like, what is it? What
Do you still feel that way? And according to Illuminate, in 2022, you're the third most streamed artist in the United States, right behind like Drake and Taylor Swift, man.
I just be having a point to prove, or just be having something to say.
You obviously know you've influenced a whole generation and influenced so many other rappers.
And that's where the theory gains even more traction, because it's not just that he releases a lot, it's that the pace seems superhuman to some people. Most artists, even with big budgets, strong teams, full studio access, and no legal pressure, don't maintain that kind of volume for long. But YoungBoy kept dropping and dropping and dropping full-length projects, finished records, market-ready releases, all while dealing with circumstances that should have slowed anybody down.
One thing about YoungBoy dropping like 5 albums a year, I think it's dumb, bro. I mean, I don't even know where to start with YoungBoy anymore. Like, I'm not a big fan of his music because if you drop that many tracks in a year, like, of course, if you're say some people maybe are talented like that, maybe Juice WRLD, I'd say, of just being able to come up with new flows and new types of songs on different beats, just being able to like freestyle on the spot, whole ass songs, they're not even punching in, just like freestyling for a whole hour. Y'all remember that freestyle that Juice WRLD did? But again, 5 projects, man, like, it's just too much, man.
That's why Katt Williams' comments hit as hard as they did, because he basically framed the situation in a way that forces people into one of 2 conclusions. Either we are looking at an artist operating at a level that barely seems physically possible, or there is far more happening behind that machine than the public can see. And what makes it even wilder is that YoungBoy's own fan base has been saying versions of this for years without fully realizing what they're implying. Fans constantly separate him into eras as if they're talking about different people instead of different phases. They'll tell you one version had more pain, one version had more hunger, one version felt colder, one version felt detached. To them, it's just music discussion, but to people already suspicious, that sounds like something else. Then comes the question that gives this whole theory its darkest edge. If this kind of control were possible, why choose YoungBoy? Why him? Why not someone safer, bigger, more polished, more industry-friendly? Katt's answer, at least the one people pull from his commentary, is chilling. Because influence matters more than image. The biggest artist is not always the most strategically important artist. The most important one is the one who has direct emotional access to the youth, and that's exactly where YoungBoy becomes impossible to ignore. His fan base isn't just loyal, it's intense, young, emotional, identity-driven. These are listeners who don't just play the music, they attach themselves to it. They grow inside it, they mirror it, they build around it.
Ain't no way these YoungBoy fans are real people.
I pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of NBA YoungBoy, and to the republic on 4K trade.
These people look at him like he's God. It's one thing to like somebody's music, but it's another thing when you're on your knees crying to him while he's on stage performing. You can't scroll down on your feed without seeing some YNs going crazy looking like they're getting possessed at this YoungBoy concert.
So if someone wanted to shape culture at the level where it's still forming, not just entertain people, but influence behavior, mood, loyalty, and worldview, you wouldn't necessarily choose the artist with the oldest audience. You would choose the artist whose listeners are still impressionable, still becoming who they are. And that is what makes this theory feel so disturbing to the people who believe it. Now, I know what some of y'all are thinking. This sounds insane. It sounds too far. It sounds like one of those stories that should fall apart the second you say it out loud. And maybe that's exactly why it keeps surviving, because the people hearing it can't decide whether to laugh at it or look deeper. But here's the part that keeps dragging Katt Williams back into the center of the conversation. He has said a lot of things over the years that people mocked first and took seriously later. That pattern is real. And because that pattern is real, every new thing he says automatically gets more attention than it otherwise would.
Well, what it was that I was attempting to do was impossible. So before I do this interview, there is no Illuminati. It's just a joke. It's just something that crazy people talk about. There's no such thing as our side and God's side. None of that is even real. I gotta come and make it real. So that's why when I said that, nobody came out and went, that's not true, I'm on God's side. If part of the ritual is wearing a dress, then we should be able to look through entertainment and see all of these people being made to wear a dress.
He's talked for years about how the industry manufactures public figures, protects certain circles, buries certain truths, and rewards silence. At first, people brushed it off as Katt being Katt. But then piece by piece, story by story, scandal by scandal, the culture started catching up to claims that once sounded impossible. That is exactly why this NBA YoungBoy conversation refuses to die. Because for the people who believe Katt is usually early rather than wrong, this doesn't feel like a random conspiracy. It feels like another warning that sounds crazy only because the full picture hasn't surfaced yet. And then there's the moment that poured gasoline on everything. Late in 2024, Katt Williams reportedly went live unexpectedly and spoke in a way that, according to people who saw it, felt far more serious than performative. No jokes, no theatrics, just a direct, unsettling monologue, the kind of tone that makes people screen record first and process later. According to clips and reposts that circulated afterward, Katt suggested he had seen things inside the industry that would fundamentally change how ordinary people understand celebrity. And he didn't frame it as metaphor. He framed it like experience, like memory, like somebody trying to say just enough to be understood, but not enough to say too much. Then came the line that made everything explode. The implication that what the public sees is not always the original person, but sometimes a version that looks right, sounds right, performs right, yet isn't right. Whether you take that literally or symbolically, that line stuck, hard, and just as fast as it spread, it started disappearing. Posts gone, clips buried, accounts flagged, re-uploads removed, and of course, for the people already suspicious, that only made the theory feel bigger. Because in the internet age, nothing gives a rumor more power than the appearance of suppression. So let's zoom out, because this isn't really just about NBA YoungBoy, and it's not just about Katt Williams either. It's about the larger fear that the entertainment industry is not merely building stars, it's manufacturing continuity. That once an artist becomes too valuable as a brand, the person becomes secondary to the product. The face matters, the output matters, the numbers matter, but the human being behind it? Maybe not as much as people want to believe. And if that sounds extreme, look at the question sitting underneath all of this. How does the machine keep moving no matter what happens to the artist? Legal problems, house arrest, public controversy, personal chaos, pressure from every direction, and still, the content keeps flowing. The brand keeps operating, the machine never seems to stall. That's the question Katt Williams keeps pushing people back toward. Not believe me because I said it, but why does this pattern keep happening in front of you? And whether you think the answer is cloning, industry manipulation, artist replacement, psychological control, or just the dark side of celebrity machinery, one thing is clear. People are starting to ask harder questions than they used to. And maybe that's the real reason this conversation matters. Not because every theory is true exactly the way it's told, but because too many strange patterns have been ignored for too long. Too many warnings were laughed off right up until they weren't funny anymore. I'll leave you with the same feeling this entire story leaves behind. You don't have to believe everything to realize something is off. You don't have to accept every theory to admit the timeline raises questions. And you definitely don't have to agree with Katt Williams on everything to admit that when he talks, people have learned to listen more carefully than they used to. Time has a way of exposing what people once dismissed. It's done it before, and maybe eventually it'll do it here too. Until then, all we can really do is keep looking, keep questioning, and keep paying attention. Because sometimes the wildest story isn't the one people made up. It's the one people were told not to examine too closely. Like, subscribe and share this before it disappears again. And remember, the moment people start telling you not to ask questions is usually the moment the real story begins.